Just going to keep hitting that admit button for a few minutes. Good morning to everyone that is joining us. Good to see you. Good to see some names that we recognise in there as well. Please do use the chat along the bottom of Zoom to say hello, share your social media handles, ask us questions throughout. I was slightly worried. I didn't tell you, Andy. Well, I couldn't tell you because we actually didn't have any power till nearly 10 o'clock this morning. So in my head, I was trying to think of contingency plans, but it all came back on. So we're fine. I don't know if anyone else has had any blackouts yet. People are still joining. Andy, how are you? This is the first time of 2023, even though we're almost at the end of the first month. Are you well?
I'm doing very well, actually. Doing
Good.
very well. Yeah, it's as I was just saying, it's kind of not the best start to the year, it's fair to say, this year, but we're getting there. We're back in the swing of things now.
Good. So the updates that we're sharing today, there is some in here from December as well, because we didn't do an update at the end of December. If you haven't joined us before, I think many of you have. My name's Luan Wise, and Andy will introduce himself in a minute. This is our first social media update of 2023. We do these events monthly. If you've missed previous ones and want to have a look, then let me know. I will send out a link to the YouTube playlist, and I think there's about 25 on there now, Andy. So we have been doing this
You're racking them up.
Time. There's always things to talk about. By day, I'm a social media marketer, consultant, trainer, train on behalf of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Google, and also work directly with clients across a whole range of sectors, B2B and B2C. And the purpose of these updates is not, hopefully, to overwhelm you by just how much change goes on in the world of social media, but to help you in the fact that Andy and I know many others constantly read the news and what's going on, to the point where nearly 2 years ago now, I couldn't find a single source of news. So I created one. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'll put a link in the chat shortly. The lighthouse.social is a website where I curate all the news from the newsrooms and credible news sources together, along with a resource library around all the apps and sites that I go and have a look at and use regularly. And there is also a jobs board on there as well. Andy,
awesome.
yourself.
Great intro. I'm going to keep mine super short. I'm Andy. I now work for Adobe. In a previous life, last 7 years, been building a company called Content Cal, which got sold to Adobe at the end of December, and we grew that exclusively through social media. So learned a thing or two in that process and wrote a book about it called Social 3.0, how startup and small businesses can grow using social. Anyway, so with that, Luan, you've given the perfect intro, so let's dive straight into it. So let's go into the trends and the data points that you need to know. And as Luan said, this is a bit of a combo of December and January, so bring you bang up to date with everything that's happening. So cool, let's look at some data. Unsurprisingly, what is the app that's been downloaded the most? Social media app specifically that's been downloaded the most. Unsurprisingly, it's yet another chart that TikTok tops. So this is exclusively on Android, but across all of the other app stores, it is the most. So unsurprisingly, and the reason we look at stuff like this is because that then kind of gives us a nice forecast, because app downloads, what's leading app download charts today are the channels that will continue to grow moving forward. So TikTok's growth shows no signs of slowing whatsoever is the kind of key message with that. But interestingly, when you start to look at some of the behavioral dynamics of TikTok users, there's some interesting stuff here. So, and I think this is the bit that's got Facebook and Instagram, a little bit worried about the future of their own apps, because when you look at how much people open this per day, so 30% of all of those users on TikTok open the app every single day. And the typical time that those users spend on the app is 10 times that of Instagram, which is the second highest in terms of time spent. So it goes to show, like, and the reason I've said this numerous times before, but the reason we care about numbers like this is because the more that people spend time on these social media apps, the more time they have to consume the content that we create, more chance of our posts reaching more people, right? So, notwithstanding some of the, the challenges of TikTok and whether it's good to open the app that many times per day, notwithstanding those things, but from a business perspective, TikTok continues to give us an incredible chance of reaching new people. So that's the kind of key message from both of these bits of data. But also when you start to dig into it a little bit, and this is why I'm kind of continually sticking with this report, I'm interested in your take on this as well, Luan, is like when they ran a big survey around about 1,400 TikTok users of like, why do you use the app? And this kind of helps us shape our strategy and helps us shape the kind of content we might create for TikTok. And even though I'm starting with TikTok here, just as a side note, it doesn't mean everyone suddenly needs to be on TikTok. Hopefully it's just kind of giving you an idea of like things you could implement in your strategy, but it's not for everyone. Anyway, so what do people use TikTok for? It's slightly depressing, 43% mindless entertainment. That's a depressing indictment of society, if you ask me. Like, we're just going to randomly scroll through stuff. But it just goes to show, it's like, that's why TikTok is so darn strong. For anyone that's made the mistake of downloading the app, you'll find yourself, you immediately lost half an hour to it because it's so darn good at recognizing the things that you're interested in. But it's entertainment orientated content that has a hook within the first 5 seconds that absolutely hooks you in, quite literally. But the thing that I think is most interesting from this slide, outside the top two, which is, entertainment and music, etc., it's about 23% discovering new products to purchase, keeping up with specific creators, education, learning, keeping up with brands. So actually it's becoming underneath the top bit, because we might, sometimes can be a bit glib and saying, oh, like TikTok's, full of nonsense. But actually underneath that, when you start, and we'll get into some TikTok SEO stuff later on, which I think is really interesting. When you start picking beneath that and start to see some of the other audience behaviors, more and more brands are being discovered first on TikTok. It's being used more for purchase intent, like the whole TikTok made me buy it. And the fact we're starting to see like stuff that's trending in TikTok in physical stores, and it's selling out immediately. So the influence that TikTok is having on purchasing behavior is absolutely real at the moment. So I think that's a really significant call out from this slide. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling on. What's your take on this?
Well, I'd like to know how people differentiate between mindless entertainment and comic relief, but that's always the definitions, but they come both at the top. So I think this is about considering that TikTok is primarily an entertainment-led platform, unlike the others, perhaps. But you're right, and all the conversations I've been having this month and the trends updates and the summaries have been very much about needing to have a big shift in our mindset this year to that bottom half around social being used for search, social being used for news, how that impacts our content, how we think differently about what our users are doing on these platforms, and that that's a really important thing for everyone to be kind of focusing on this year. So yeah, those are the biggest takeaways for me from this data.
Yeah, definitely with you on that. So we were talking about time spent. Now this is, sorry about like how small some of this is. You might need to zoom in a little bit, plus it's being recorded. So sorry about some of the slides in advance. Anyway, the call out from this is about reach, which is on the left hand column, and then reach is at the bottom and time spent is on the left. Basically what this chart is showing is how substantial social media is. So if you still need to convince anyone in your business or any client or whomever the impact of social media, just show them this slide, because here what you'll see is that not only do people spend more time on social media than actual TV by quite a substantial margin. So if I just hover the mouse over here, basically nearly as much time as people spend on a PC or laptop or tablet. The amount of people that have access to social media, so percentage of reach, as in the amount of society we have access to through social, it just goes to show how absolutely significant it is, second only to mobile or PCs as like a platform to reach people. So honestly, it's just a chart that I don't think any of us, we're on this call because we already get social media, so I don't think anyone else need too much of a reminder, but I just thought it's a standout data point to show how significant and substantial the reach of social media really is. And if we look at, this report was really interesting. It's from our friends at Global Web Index, as per usual, Luan. So this one, if you look outside of like the core video platforms, because of course video consumption is highest on YouTube and TikTok, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out, but like video watching on social, this is quite interesting when you think about the mix of the different formats of the content that we publish to those platforms. So what percentage of content is consumed as video on each of these platforms? So, if we're thinking about Instagram, increasingly, even though Instagram are starting to make noises about going back to a more kind of photo orientated feed and having less reliance on video, I don't actually see that playing out at all, to be honest. I think that's noise, because they're too focused on going after TikTok. And as you can see, user consumption is big and, orientates heavily towards video on Instagram. Similar story with Facebook, but I think one interesting thing here for me is Reddit as well, because considering it being like a text-based forum orientated platform, the growth of video on Reddit has been substantial. In fact, like the growth of Reddit as a platform is absolutely massive, still double-digit growth year on year. The media don't talk about it much, other than some of the kind of crazy things that sometimes happen on Reddit. But honestly, I think it's a bit of an oversight for us all as kind of social media marketers, because there is such a plethora of really valuable conversation and communities that exist on Reddit, and it continues to grow. So I think that is my call out. And also I think the other call out for anyone that are, that's really into LinkedIn as well. Like I am a, big fan of LinkedIn, as are you, Luan. Yeah. But interesting, like video performance isn't as high on LinkedIn as it is on other platforms, and the quantity of video content is lower, which is slightly depressing for me to hear, because all the content I create for LinkedIn is video. Never mind. So I might have to reorientate that a little bit. But anyway,
I think that could be in part, Andy, because the LinkedIn Live video feature is kind of restricted as such to needing a creator account and meeting certain requirements. So I think, if LinkedIn were to open that up to more, I think we might see it high, see that a bit higher. So I think that is potentially because of the LinkedIn Live eligibility criteria. That's
fair. Any surprises on this chart for you, Luan?
Well, I was really pleased just to see LinkedIn on this chart, because it often it doesn't appear sometimes when we're talking about trends and what we're doing. You mentioned kind of Reddit being perhaps underestimated and not talked about so much, and I actually think the same is true of Snapchat as well. In lots of reports it comes through, in Gen Z reports it comes through as being higher, younger people using it. And for me, Snapchat and Reddit are about a different kind of conversation within groups than perhaps we see on the other platforms. So video isn't going away in 2023, and it would be interesting to see other slices of this around long form and short form as well. But I think this is just a good reminder to look outside perhaps the 4 or 5 platforms that we tend to talk about. And while we talk about data, and as always is the way, that when we do one of these sessions, news comes out in the morning of the day. The latest data reportal 450 slide report was published this morning. That's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day. But I've got it open on a screen because Simon Kemp, who publishes it, has put one of the biggest insights is even greater overlaps in social media audiences, which means we're using more platforms. So all of this new stuff that happens, we are adding on more layers to what we're doing all of the time. And I think that's what this is showing too.
Love that. Great call out. Right, okay, so there's some data points for you. Let's look at some trends, and then we're going to go network by network and look at the feature updates, of which Luan is going to mostly guide you through. So some interesting trends have happened related to news consumption. So I want to kind of shine a light on that, actually, because it shows some really interesting audience behaviors and also shows the type of content that people are consuming. So kind of more educational, informational orientated content as opposed to entertainment orientated. So unsurprisingly, we've continued to see that social media is the #1 source of news consumption. It has been that way for a while and continues to outweigh the traditional media channels for news consumption. No surprise there. But I'm going to look at some other platforms as well, but I want to shine a quick light on TikTok here, because there's lots of reports related to TikTok here, and it actually shows like how culture is changing and evolving based on the audience demographic. So what that little blue line represents is what percentage of the audience base of TikTok use it for news within certain demographics? So unsurprisingly, increasingly a younger demographic is going to social first, particularly TikTok, for all of their news and current affairs consumption. So I don't think that's a huge surprise, but I think it's really interesting to see those changes come through, because that will impact considering, you know, who we're trying to target. And Luan, you always talk about like thinking about how you're going to influence others, even if you're not necessarily targeting, you know, an 18 to 24-year-old demographic, right? It's all about influencing. But when you start to look about or look into, you know, when we look at social media news consumption, rather than just saying more people are consuming news on social and leaving it at that, I think it's really interesting when you shine a light under the kind of dynamics that sit under the news consumption across these social platforms. Because when you look at Twitter, is that people are still consuming mainstream news and mainstream journalists. So this color here, you can see at the top. So even though they're consuming it on a different platform, they're still going to you know, those editors that they follow from The Guardian or things like that, right? So the change isn't absolutely as marked as as you might think. But then when you start to look at, you know, TikTok at the bottom, and increasingly this is where kind of culture is formed. Increasingly, this is where the kind of younger demographic is spending more time, as well as other demographics as well. When you look at that, what most people are getting their news from is this kind of black line here, which is internet personalities, influencers, ultimately. So that might make some of us quake in our boots, but it also makes some of us go, okay, so naturally, if you think about what that means for us as businesses, because we're not, you know, I guess most of us aren't news or media publishers, what that means for us is that increasingly the weight that individuals have, not necessarily influencers, but personalities, those creators, those people that we choose to follow, the weight and influence that they continue to have on an audience is massively substantial. So this is nothing new, the advice that comes off the back of this, but collaboration with these individuals, these creators, these people that have created communities, honestly, the influence that they have is substantial. So the best thing that we can do as businesses is to spend time forging those collaborations, working with those individuals that have those communities. You notice I'm trying to avoid using the word influencer, because this isn't about working with people with tens of millions of followers. It's those with like 2 to 10,000, those kind of things that have that kind of that influence over their community, working with those and thinking beyond our feed, beyond the stuff that we just publish in our feed. It will really serve us well going forward, because I think there's some really interesting behaviors represented here. So Luan, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, again, this has already come up in the conversations I've been having this month around working with influencers and the different categories of influencers. You're right, the 1 to 10,000 followers is as key as the, you know, the big celebrities that are coming through. I think that's going to feature more this year. The news mindset, it's about trust, isn't it? You know, the whole social media world, you know, social selling is about getting to know, like, and trust. For me, that's what comes across here. And I would just add, because I presented on it for someone yesterday, if you are working with influencers, if you are looking at partnerships, there are guidelines around how to do this. There is an exchange of value, whether that's gifts or financial. Do check out the Advertising Standards Association guide to working with influencers. It's in the lighthouse.social research resources library as well, because, you know, things can go wrong and there needs to be caveats around it. It is an increasingly important channel, but when it comes to news, we also know that social media, the news, printed media as well, is susceptible to misinformation and disinformation. So this is a really important slide, but there's a lot of work and thinking to do around it.
Such a good call out. Yeah, thanks for flagging that. Cool. All right, back on to something less nebulous. Let's talk about product discovery on social media. Instagram is winning that race based on Global Web Index's studies. So 61% of Instagram users, according to this survey of 175,000 people, go to Instagram to find products. So as you can see, that weights more heavily than the other platforms. Interestingly, Facebook is very high here. No doubt in no small part influenced by Facebook shops as well. You'll see some changes as well that we'll talk about later on pertaining to TikTok, because they're all going after social commerce. Social commerce is really where it's at. We'll speak about more around that later, but really interesting to know that most of us probably have Instagram in our strategy. And if we are looking at trying to grow the awareness or drive some actions on the products that we sell, Instagram is still performing incredibly strongly for that. But let's look at Instagram. I keep on talking about TikTok. Sorry, there's so much data on TikTok. It's ridiculous. So like, sorry if I'm boring people senseless talking about TikTok. But yeah, here at this point, when you look at TikTok versus Instagram, and we've spoken about this before, but this heat map's kind of good to look at. Well, it's not a heat map, but I forget what this chart's called, but work with me on it. Either way, for those with fewer followers, our chance of being seen by more people is so much greater on TikTok than it is on Instagram, for the simple reason that TikTok is not built around your friend graph. So you can have 2 followers or you can have 3,000. It doesn't actually make a big difference in terms of how much your content is discovered, because naturally the way content gets discovered is through a recommendation engine. So that's why TikTok has turned social media on its head, and it's actually not social media really in the truest sense of the word, because it's not built around the friends, around your friends, because they know intrinsically, they know the biggest flaw across Instagram, Facebook, all of the others is that predominantly what most people's friends post are boring or is boring, right? So naturally they want to share different content that most people want to engage with. So what that means for us as businesses, it means we have a higher chance of being seen by more people. And there's a few key ways that we can do that, of which I'll share with some of the updates related to TikTok later on. But don't read from this that you should move off Instagram onto TikTok. All I'm painting here is that there is opportunity for good organic growth, and it's going to continue into 2023 and beyond. That's my take on it. Do you have a take on this before we move on to some features?
I'm not going to comment that we both smiled about friends being boring. We're not. I think it's important to kind of see that these platforms are all different and all have different roles to play, and that we're adding layers and looking at using them in different ways rather than trying to kind of replicate and do the same thing on every platform. So it's just adding those layers to everything that we're doing.
Definitely. All right, Luan.
New features. Shall we start with Instagram? As we said, some of these features are from December, some from January. If you follow both Andy and I on LinkedIn and look in other places, we share these as they happen as well. A Reels share counter is being added. We both love it when there is more data. We like data. It tells us what's happening, who's engaging, what's going on. So I think this is useful. The more engagement triggers there are when we know what people are doing. But interestingly, this numbers conversation on Instagram and other platforms is actually something I did a LinkedIn Live with 2 academics last week around social media, emotions, and the impact of seeing likes and comments and how that encourages us to get involved with it even more. So Instagram did do a lot of testing around this a couple of years ago. So I think it's interesting that they're adding this layer of data, because it does encourage more people to get involved when we see these counts and these numbers. Shadow bans.
I like this one.
Yeah. In our sessions, and I think both of us in our own work, we try and avoid talking about myths and myth busting and what's being tested. We try and stick with the facts or the credible news. But shadow bans are something that has been talked about in the world of social media for many years, about people having their accounts restricted, their content restricted, and actually Instagram have demystified this and are now having more visibility, transparency around when content can't be recommended to people that aren't following you. This could be because of their community guidelines, because of a hashtag you've used, or something in the imagery. It's quite clear in the the middle shot of this that it's about drugs and tablets, which are restricted content on social media. So the fact that the platforms tell us what they're doing I think is always a good thing, and the news that we need to pay attention to.
Definitely. I love it. It gives us an opportunity to course correct. So we don't see like we're thinking that Instagram's a monster that's against us and we can't see what's happening. I think they needed this level of transparency. So I love it.
Yeah. I think, Andy, that this is almost the same as the next slide in terms of news about communities, groups coming to Instagram, which for me, when I double checked on this, because there's so much news you have to go back and check it sometimes, this is almost like Facebook groups on Instagram, which I think is a nice thing, because as we know, not everyone is using every platform. Instagram does have different nuances and how people are using it. So to be able to create communities or groups within Instagram, I think may take people away from Facebook. Perhaps it depends on the nature of your group, but I do believe that at the moment, when these do roll out, that they're limited to 5,000 members. So at the moment, you know, there are some very large groups on Facebook, so perhaps this is just their introduction to see how they can work on this platform. But I think this will be exciting. Yeah, group profiles, you can create a group, so it could be for a smaller community group.
I just want to call out group profiles really quickly, because it's a slight nuance to the communities that we were just speaking about, is that you could have a group profile which allows everyone to contribute content to this. So fantastic for like generating user generated content if you want to. So people can contribute to this group profile, which can be super useful. And you could even, I was thinking out loud here, set up particular challenges as well, where people could submit their submission to a challenge and you can create a group profile just related to this challenge. Just another way of like encouraging that level of interaction and user participation, which could be super useful. So I'm liking this from Instagram, their orientation more towards like audience participation, which I think is definitely love that.
The notes feature on Instagram, this made me smile when I read the article on this, because this is about being able to add a bit of a note that sits in your inbox above your DMs, and the article likened it to the worlds of MSN Messenger and Skype, where you can kind of say, you know, this is what I'm thinking today, or what I'm feeling. Some of you won't
I think we show our age. We show our age here. I think
but this is where you can literally just add a small note, maybe a bit of a status update. You know, it's cold outside kind of thing that lasts for 24 hours, but sits in that inbox. So I'm sure it will develop into something a bit more than that at some point, but it's a new feature.
Yeah, also some additional context behind this is that what Instagram are observing an increasing rise of people electing to share directly in a DM as opposed to share it in a feed. So they're knowing that, like, seeing the rise of DMs, they want to have these as like conversation prompts. So if I can see Luan is traveling around the north coast of Scotland, I can message her about it. So it's nice, but yeah, not game changing. Back to you.
Thank you. I'm doing Ireland this year rather than the Scotland coast.
Nice.
And are we surprised that a Be Real replica is now coming to Instagram? So TikTok introduced TikTok Now. Instagram have introduced Candid Stories, which is that point in time where you can get any notification at any point in the day. Never goes off when we do a webinar, but where you can take a front and a back camera picture and share it just with your friends.
I'm interested in the chat, actually, who's using Be Real and using it regularly. I'm fascinated. I'm wondering, I think it's going to be at the next kind of Clubhouse and the boom and bust type of thing, but I've been wrong before, so I might well be wrong again. So
for me, it depends when the notification goes off. It always seems to go off when I'm just sat on the sofa watching something, mindless entertainment, or something, rather than, you know, doing anything interesting. But I do think that the FOMO of someone else has posted a big Be Real does kind of make me think, oh, I want to see what they've done. So I think, you know, the concept behind it, but not just sure how to do it. Oh, I'm one of someone's 5 friends, I will post more for you on there. Add yours nominations. I really like this feature in Instagram stories. It's a really easy prompt, isn't it? And it harks back to actually how TikTok built itself so quickly by setting challenges, is that when you ask people to do something and ask them to do something simple, like add a picture of your pet, add, you know, a picture of, you know, the last photo in your library or something. It is easy for people to do and get involved. So yeah, I love those stickers on Instagram.
Definitely. I think, like, again, going back to that user generated content idea, the fact you could tag maybe one of your customers or one of the kind of your ambassadors that you might have for your business and tag them and say, you know, add your whatever it is. It might be like, you know, if you sell coats, like show us like wearing a coat on an adventure or something like that. So you can add your stickers have been about for a while, but now obviously this different dimension is that you can call out and go, hey, Luan, you know, add yours and pass it on. So great way to once again encourage participation and potentially, you know, start trends straight from this. Facebook. Of
course, the big news this morning is that Donald Trump's account is being reinstated on Facebook. Whether he will come back or not, we don't know, but you know, that is a latest breaking news story. But I think more interestingly is, again, it's all about interaction, isn't it? Encouraging people to engage with your content and add comments and have conversations. So Facebook adding comments to stories. People can now add comments to your story. Groups, we saw lots of additional features for group admins over the last 12 months and beyond about making it more engaging, more features to go off and have side conversations, to moderate, to nominate experts. And I think this is another nice feature add around Content Explorer, which allows group admins to go and find content, perhaps from other groups within the group, to share with the group. So we often know that, you know, there could be content blocks or what do we want to do, and it is all about getting your groups talking. This is a big reason why people keep returning to the Facebook platform. So more features in groups, I think, is a good thing.
Definitely.
Instagram DM feature. So again, we're seeing cross activity between the platforms, which again I think is going to increase this year. We've seen, you know, it's good from a user point of view to not have to keep switching in and out of everything all of the time. So being able to kind of send in an Instagram direct message from Facebook is again a nice add, I think. Ready-made reels, again, not just Facebook, not just Instagram, TikTok, they are all trying to make it easier for content creators to take things from their photo libraries, to share stories, to put reels together. Ready-made reels as a feature, again, it's just trying to make things easier to get more people involved. Love this one, targeting. The more targeting you can have, criteria, they have taken away a lot of targeting options over the past few years. GDPR, data issues, misinformation as well, but now being able to target your Instagram followers and build custom audiences from that, I think is another great level for Meta to be adding to their ad manager.
Definitely agree with that.
Twitter stuff been, how many questions have you had about Twitter and what's going on, what's not going on?
I've been refusing to talk about it for the last 3 months, but now I think we're good to talk.
We're ready.
There.
And you know, if we can say anything, Elon Musk via his own account is sharing what he's thinking, doing, actions. However you might respond to those, he's sharing lots of information. And one of those is that new user signups are at an all-time high. And I think usage is still holding up as well on the platform. I know some clients have had conversations internally about their use of Twitter because colleagues have obviously asked the social media marketing teams. I think it has been conversations around a risk assessment of being on this platform. What does it mean? Some organizations have had concerns around ethical activity and motivations and what's happening. And I know some people have withdrawn advertising from that. I think this actually, the bigger conversation here, Andy, is about change. And when change happens to a platform, and how do people react to that? Is there a mass exodus to another platform? Do we continue using it? How will it impact our business? And I think actually, if we reflect on the end of 2022, that's what the conversation was really about, of something big is changing here. What's it going to mean?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think the interesting thing is, despite all of the media frenzy, you know, underlying the business isn't making money at all, but users continue to flock to the platform.
And
Right.
but he is trying to monetize it. Some false starts on this. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, someone's not on mute.
Sorry,
there.
I've sorted the mute.
Oh, was that you? Thank you.
Cool.
So Twitter Blue is the paid for subscription element. I think it is now the same price on Android and Apple devices. Had some false starts around when it was rolling out. There is going to be additional features around Twitter Blue. So I don't know, it'd be great to know if the chat, if anyone has subscribed yet, if they're seeing anything different. I have one account on it, one account not, just watching to see what happens, but some interesting feature options, as we can see here, if you can read it, kind of around navigation. Longer video upload is perhaps a key reason for upgrading, but I think this is the area to watch as he tries to move more people into paying.
I'm with you. I'm sorry about how awful this slide looks, because I've just taken this from a press release. But yeah, where I'm hovering my mouse is the thing that I think everyone should pay most attention to, is that Twitter will quite literally become pay to play. If you want to be seen, you will need to pay. So prioritize rankings and conversations. So this is the start of it. And they're going to be launching Blue for Business, which I think is going to be really good. But ultimately, I think this is going to be the differentiator for businesses that get onto this fairly quickly, where they'll be able to achieve higher reach than people that are not paying. The ethics and whether that's good or not, I won't comment on that now, but that does give people an opportunity for a bit of first mover advantage on that, I think. Cool. Back over to you, Luan. LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. So accessibility features is again something we've talked about in the past, and how the platforms are kind of integrating this into their own setup. So they're making it easier to add things like here, LinkedIn auto captions on video, on live content, alt text, things like that. So yeah, LinkedIn are adding those features. I think any platform that's doing this, it's a good thing, and we should be using these features as well.
Saves a lot of editing time, that is for sure.
Unless it never gets your name right, which it doesn't. Right, yes. There is some other new features coming. They did a bit of an announcement at the beginning of the year. Contrast mode, whether people like that or not. Some of your screenshots are in dark mode. I personally don't like dark mode. Use of emojis on LinkedIn, but this one, the bottom one, LinkedIn newsletters. So LinkedIn are kind of prioritizing letting people know, if you have a LinkedIn newsletter, you have to have a creator account to be producing a LinkedIn newsletter on your personal profile. Your company page may already have it because they were a company page feature first. It will now feature on your profile if you have a newsletter. It'll be right under your name. And also what's rolling out is, along the bottom of someone's LinkedIn profile, where you can see what influencers they follow, what groups they're in, you will now be able to see what newsletters people are subscribed to. So making it more visible, I think, is what they're working on.
Yeah, definitely. I think that LinkedIn are doing a lot around SEO as well. So increasingly more people are using the search function in LinkedIn. So making sure, if you want to use a newsletter, that is, newsletters will be much easier to discover, provided they're using the right keywords in their titles and descriptions. So yeah, you're going to see a lot around social and SEO coming up in a couple of slides time. Actually, it's quite an interesting thing that's happening. Back over to you.
I love competitor analytics, which you can access if you're a company page admin. If you haven't looked at this and you're a company page admin, go in there, add your competitors. You can list up to 10, and then you can keep an eye on how many new followers they're getting, what the engagement levels with posts are, how many posts they're doing a month, and like other analytics and insights, you can kind of toggle the dates and see those over time. You can't export much of this data, so you may need to do it manually, but I think this is a feature that people should be looking at if they haven't already. Carousels, haven't they been a popular format that's appeared in lots of the trends data that you've shared recently? Again, the platform's trying to make it easier for people to create content within the apps as well. LinkedIn have got into this, said that, they have now, carousel should be a feature and not just kind of clumsy looking multiple images showing on a profile, and kind of have some templates, coloured backgrounds, text over coloured backgrounds, again, making it easier for people to get involved.
Definitely. And let's think, most people will know this anyway, but just to call it out in case it's not clear, like the carousels on LinkedIn are outperforming any other content type by a country mile. So clicks are 7 times higher than on other content. So it's little surprise you've seen a huge amount of carousels in your feed. LinkedIn tend to do this. They get into a content format and then they really push it. It's like polls 6 months ago, where literally all you could see in your feed was polls. So right now, carousels is, if you're on LinkedIn, carousels is the thing. Okay. Back to you, Luan.
And again, more analytics. So this is this creator mode account, which isn't paid for. It's a simple switch. If you're looking at your own LinkedIn personal profile, you can have the option to switch it to creator mode. Creators are now getting more and more features, not just newsletters, potentially LinkedIn Live if you meet their other criteria. Some you can have talking about and 5 hashtags underneath the top part of your profile. Your profile will be default follow rather than connect, which is a one-way interaction rather than the reciprocal kind of business card swap. Do have a look at a creator account if you haven't switched it already. And the fact that you can now get more analytics around your audience, your followers, and your content performance as well. Again, more data, but know what you're looking for. Don't just look at it for the sake of charts.
Yeah, I agree. But to be honest, LinkedIn's, I wish everyone was as crystal clear as LinkedIn, because just what you see on these slides is basically most of the things you need to inform your strategy. Overarching, how many people have you reached? What's worked the best from a content perspective? Who are you reaching? Are you reaching the right audience? And are you trending in the right direction? And also kind of download it too if you want. So LinkedIn has done some really good things. Their analytics was so ropey a year ago. So I'm really pleased about that. Right then, how are we doing for time? Perfect. All right.
Yes.
I reckon 5-10 minutes, we're done. Cool. Let's touch on TikTok. So drafts feature, because increasingly TikTok editing is getting more and more rich. It's highly likely that you'll need to do something else whilst you're busy editing your latest TikTok. So now you can just save it as a draft and come back to it later, and kind of, it just organizes it a little bit better. Full screen mode is coming. And this is really interesting because you'll start to see more and more smart TVs have TikTok embedded as an app in them. So in the same way that YouTube's growth ballooned when you started to see YouTube added as an app on smart or connected TVs, same is happening with TikTok. And also to enable a better viewing experience for TVs, they're doing the full screen mode, which basically turn your phone into a landscape orientation. And then more and more TikToks will be like that. That actually is going to lower the barrier for entry for other people out where vertical video isn't necessarily what people want to do. So look out for that. You'll start to see more and more content that encourages the user to turn the phone around as well. So TikTok fully going after YouTube right now. But yeah, once again, the growth of the TV piece is going to be absolutely massive. TikTok location tagging. I've alluded to this a couple of times, but SEO is such a big deal for TikTok. Increasingly, more people are using the search function than just casually consuming the For You feed. And really, TikTok's main competition they're going after, they've pretty much got the typical social platforms licked in terms of the amount of audience that they've amassed and how long that audience is spending on the platform. They're going after Google. That is their main competitor. And the reason they want to do this is so they can be, well, they're going after Amazon too as well, because they want to be the place where everyone searches, discovers new products, and then buys those products directly. That is the TikTok ambition. In order to make that a reality, they need to then start embedding SEO into this. So to start fueling discovery. So that's through location tagging, which now exists. So we can now find out what's happening in certain locations. But also and this happened last month, but just a reminder, they went from a limit of 130 characters, I think it was, but now to 2,200. Keywords are utterly essential in this. Hashtags are important, but not as important as keywords. That is for sure. So we're seeing people, and I saw a report just this morning, so I haven't had time to include it, more people are being discovered by, if you go to the search, actually, if you do this, if you're on TikTok, or even if you're not, I think it's a really interesting thing, because now if you go to the search function on TikTok and you search for coffee shops, for example, just like Google is now going to show you all the related searches that are trending. So including those keywords in your TikTok copy, what like early days SEO, right? Is going to allow your content to be seen, and people are reporting significant increases in reaches as a result of doing that. So I spent a lot of time talking about the importance of SEO, got very excited about it, but honestly, it's a big thing. Right, YouTube, updates to community posts. This won't matter to anyone with less than 500 followers because it's not available. So that includes myself too in that. So community posts really is like, it turns underneath the video into much more of a social media platform, much more community orientated, great for those creators that are amassing an audience on YouTube. And as you can see here, kind of behaves much more like a typical social platform. And you're going to see YouTube going much more in towards those kind of participatory, social orientated features as they move forward. They're going to continue pushing shorts as well, so more analytics. So you can tell this when they're taking a format really seriously, because they put all of the supporting infrastructure around it. So more ways to see. I think the interesting thing here is like how shorts content performance is impacting overall channel growth. So are most of your followers and is most of your view time being driven by shorts, or versus your typical longer form content? So it's nice to see a kind of compare and contrast as to what are the things that are working the best. From YouTube, they're typically seeing that creators that create both a mix of long form, typical YouTube content, and shorts as the ones that are growing the fastest. And then Amazon. What on earth is Amazon doing on this presentation? Because they have launched Inspire. They did this in December. Got a load of Amazon influencers. And as you can see, this looks like a TikTok-like feed. And they are pushing this hard. They're going big into this. So expect to see more of this in 2023. And this is where you're going to see the battle play out. Social commerce. You're going to see the battle, like I was talking about with TikTok. It's going to be fascinating to see this play out. Because what I've said this before, but what Amazon is not very good at is product discovery. It's great if you know that you need a lamp or a chair and you can go buy one. But what it isn't very good is getting people, if you don't know what you want, how do you get inspired about like great things? So following creators, following inspirational people that you admire, that's, they're going that kind of influencer route. So kind of approaching commerce from the reverse perspective that TikTok are. So going to be very interesting to see this playing out. So I'm going to leave you with 9 of the kind of trend prediction for 2023. I appreciate we're kind of towards the end of January now, but hopefully this kind of plays out and it links into some of the stuff that we've spoken about. I'm curious on your take on these as well, Luan. But I've spoken about TikTok enough, so you don't need to hear me wang on about it anymore. There was lots of noise about bans. It's not going to happen this year, so it will continue to be the most used platform. But then YouTube Shorts is going to be the most realistic rival. And I call this out a lot because I think it's going to represent like the TikTok growth opportunity that we had 2 years ago, where like organic reach reigned supreme because they want as many people using the platform as possible. So I'm always excited about opportunities to leverage organic growth and engagement. Spoken about Reddit already, but micro communities will continue to thrive. Discord is having a wonderful time of it as well. Increasingly, there's people are shunning those kind of mass social media networks and publishing their content to the masses for feeling like the safety of a micro community around those shared interests. So they are continuing to grow really well. And that's the bit that I think excites me most about social. So that means then collaboration is going to be essential for growth. I've said this phrase already, thinking beyond your feed, because the best thing that you can do to help grow your brand is find those communities where your target audience already hang out and spend the time finding ways to collaborate with those creators or community owners, etc. LinkedIn is having a wonderful time of it too. Record levels of engagement, record levels of people creating content. Luan, you gave a perfect kind of overview of what the importance of creator mode. If you want to grow on LinkedIn, it's about personal profiles. It's about having that creator mode on, but there's fantastic opportunity to reach new audiences. Spoken about social commerce, point 6 will continue to rise. It's going to be substantial. Twitter is still carnage, but I'm gonna wager a bet that I think it's going to turn out as a really good platform for businesses in the end, just not quite now. And then like the overall view is like the platform that provides the best monetary incentives for creators will win, because the creators are the ones that grow the communities. That's where communities will flock to, where they have those people that influence them. You've seen this happen, in how important those individuals or internet personalities are just for news consumption. They have, you said this earlier, Luan, about like how trust grows. It happens with that at that individual level. So actually finding and building those relationships with individuals actually takes our strategy away from just thinking, oh, I need to be in this platform or this platform. Those relationships with creators will be really important, but those creators typically go to the platforms that incentivize them the best. And then Instagram, a bit of a glib comment here, as it continues to rip off everything else it can see. It will continue to push Reels heavily, but Instagram, I think, is probably the most confusing app out of all to plan a strategy around, because they're constantly looking in their rearview mirror. So that's my take. I'm interested in your views.
I agree with all of these, and I think the challenge is, as I said at the beginning, we're not trying to overwhelm anyone by sharing so many updates and changes every month, but hopefully it's an hour well spent that you can see what is happening and the direction that things are going in. I would just add that there's, like you said about Instagram and where are they going, follow Adam Masuri on Instagram, because every week he goes live and talks about what's happening, and he has said this week that yes, they have been pushing very heavily on video, but we are still a photo sharing app and photos are still important. So again, I think there's kind of progress and then reverse. What isn't going to change is the fact that these platforms are changing all of the time, and that means that, Andy, we always have something to talk about.
Yeah, that is very true.
We don't know what we'll be talking about, but there will always be something for us to talk about. We have done this bang on time again, so a huge thank you, Andy. A huge thank you to everyone joining us live or watching the recording. As I said, we do these events monthly, so I've got it ready to put in the chat the link to sign up for future monthly updates. And as you may be aware, 3 times a year, the monthly update is part of a longer event. The schedule is out for March in terms of the speaker summit. We have a speaker on customer journey mapping, social selling, creativity, paid social, data trends, as well as Andy and I doing these updates. So please do have a look at all the events listed on Eventbrite. Register your place, they are free, and we will see you next month.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Luan.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.